starting. So we are starting our recording for our You Can't Make Me workshop. It is an interactive workshop. So hopefully this isn't all on you, Jennifer, but we'll make it work. We'll make it work. And if you're watching this as a recording later, we're so glad that you're here and you're doing this and you can sort of interact in your mind as we get to the interactive parts. We'll just wait just a couple more minutes here. So we do have Jennifer here and her chat seems to be working and we'll kind of watch, maybe just kind of let me know, Sarah, as people come in, just to remind them that there's no camera. You don't have to worry about your camera, Jennifer, or you're on mute. It's a kind of a webinar style. Just to make that's one less thing you have to worry about. Am I muted? As I'm sure life is happening at all of your houses. And but the chat is open and Sarah is here to help me with the chat. So I'll have you just do a quick introduction in just a minute, Sarah, in case people don't know who you are. Um, in just a minute, also, we're going to be giving you some links. There's a QR code that'll be on the screen. Sarah will also drop some links in the chat, or I can do that too, Sarah. Can you do you know how to grab where those are? I can grab them too. They're on a slide. I can grab them too if they're not easily accessible. They're in the speaker notes on the bottom on the page with the QR code, but I can grab them too. So we'll drop those in. There is an interactive kind of workbook that goes along with tonight. You don't need it to go through tonight. If you're watching this later on a recording and you do want to take a look at it, it will be linked right with this video. It'll also be in the resources section of kind of the portal of where you're going to grab this. And then of course the QR codes are going to be on the screen for you to grab too. So without further ado, let's just kind of jump in. What do you think, Sarah? Oh, oh yeah. Jennifer, are you driving tonight or tomorrow? Tomorrow. I bet she's driving tomorrow. You grabbed it. Great. There is an editable. Oh, you know what? That's going to come up as an edit. Darn. I did tomorrow for admitted students. That link is actually going to allow them to edit the actual document. Shoot. Is there any way you can grab that again and just change? Do you know how to change the words? Or I might be able to grab it too. Let me see if I can do it. Hmm. Yeah, let me just change this to view. Here we go. The only reason is because if you all start editing in the same document, it's going to be like, so if you want to edit right in the Google document, use this second link. There's also a PDF for those of you that just might want to print and handwrite it. And you don't have to, you can also just look at it on your screen. You don't have to print. So we welcome everybody. We are here on the eve of second winter, shall we call it? Second winter, February 19th, 2026. We are so excited to be here and really thankful for our sponsors. So, Sarah, I'll just let you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about who is making tonight possible.
Sure. Hello. I am Sarah Scoble-Moreski. I am the principal of the two Kiel virtual schools between the Lakes Virtual Academy and the Kiel eSchool. And I wrote a grant that was accepted by the Kiel Educational Endowment Foundation, and it's very generous donors. So we are grateful to Keefe for sponsoring this for all of our students, and not only in Kiel, but all of the students that are in the virtual school as well. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this went out to I shared this out on some of my platforms. So I just want to also let everybody know, if you are not in the Kiel School District or a part of their virtual program and academy, we're so glad you're here as well. And also, please know that for those of you not in that district that wouldn't be able to go in person, if you are looking for a virtual option for your kiddo, contact Sarah. Maybe she'll give us some contact information. One of the things that's really kind of important and unique to know is that they do accept and work with and have experience with working with kids with IEPs and learning differences. And that can be a challenge in the virtual platform at times. I think we're getting better. I think we're getting better and there are more options available, but I'm really proud and honored to be a part of the work that you guys are all doing. So let's jump in. This is the first of a little bit of a series, and they are not. You can watch one without the other, but if you are watching these, this one would be the one to watch first, and I'll kinda say that speak to that on at the next one as well. So, whoops, we are also offering on March 2nd, same time, 6:30 to 8. I think I forgot to put that on the slide. This workshop is gonna be specific to parenting during the age of digital tech, and I'm actually gonna go over my top 10 recommendations for managing, supporting digital tech in your child's life, in their learning environment, and also in, like, not just making it, like, manageable, but actually using it as a great tool, having it be a part of connection with your kid, and knowing like, opening up all of the doors that technology can while keeping our kids safe and creating digital resilience and citizenship. So I hope that you consider joining us for that. And then again, on this slide, this is the interactive workbook. So I don't know if we have anybody else hopping in, but you can use the QR code. If the Google Doc takes you to the same document, just make a copy. It was supposed to go to a forced copy, but sometimes Google likes to change that. I don't know why. I don't know why. I'll put copy in the back end, and then it does that out. And there's also a PDF. So you can print that out later, look at it while you're going along. So let's dig in. We are going to talk tonight about our kiddos and whether you are someone who's raising a kid, someone who supports someone who's raising a kid, whether you are part of a village supporting kids, a teacher, a practitioner, we know that, and no matter where you're at in that journey and when you entered into that kiddo's life, we know that when they first come into this world, they are just, precious. And when they cry and they fuss, we understand because they're just these tiny little humans trying to figure out how to be in this big, bright, cold world. And so their behaviors seem to make sense to us. And then they get an opinion. And I remember the day my kiddo got an opinion. I called my mom and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I just experienced my first opinion. And I was a teacher and I thought, I got this. This is no big deal. And then I didn't got it. So, I just a little bit about my journey. I actually found parent training by way of running out of ideas of how to help my strong-willed kiddo. And so that's what I'm doing now. And I know that whether your kiddo is strong-willed or not, they all have opinions. They all have opinions. From our, 1.5 and 2-year olds on up. So that's what we're going to be talking about today is how do we handle them with those opinions and still honor their authentic selves without squashing them. So I don't know about any of you. I don't know if Jennifer's still with us, but does it ever feel like Groundhog Day at your house or at school? Like I'm having the same conversation with my 9-year-old, or my 15-year-old and I seem to not ever be able to get to the bottom of like, why is this happening again? Right. So even though we're well past Groundhog Day, if that's you, that's also part of what we're going to talk about tonight. I'm Jilly Doherty. I am now, yeah. Oh, yes. You have a range. Jennifer has a range, 8 to 18. You see it all. It's Groundhog Day times 3 at your house, maybe. I was an educator for almost 30 years, and that's actually how I sort of was connected to Sarah, although we had my kiddo was also her student a while back. Um, so like I said, I was kind of felt like, oh, I've done this. And then I realized that being a teacher and being a mom are not the same. They're not the same skill set. And I had to learn some different skills to help me and my role as a mom. I actually have 2 kids, and one is now 16 and one is 19. And tonight, Jennifer, you're gonna get a little bit of a call out, but that's okay. For those of you that are watching this virtually, or I mean on recording, just kind of think about, is there one of these that's jumping out to you? So tonight we're going to talk about the proven secret to increasing your child's cooperation and ending arguing. And I'm talking really ages 2 through 17 plus, up to 21, even 25. We know the brain isn't fully developed till around 25, and that's an average. So that means half of, about 50% of our kids are there. Um, yeah, thank you. So we're going to talk about the secret, but I really don't want it to be a secret anymore. I really want you to spread the word about this. And we're also going to be creating scripts to help with that common language to support communication. And then we're going to talk about the success formula for how do we do this and still hold them accountable without creating power struggle. So that's a lot to pack into about an hour. We are going to also offer a Q&A. So Jennifer, if you're still here and you want to ask any questions, or if people hop in or you have questions, or if you're watching this as a recording, we want to be able to answer your questions, and we'll kind of talk about some ways to get a hold of me later. Um, Okay, yes. Great. Ended the fights for the most part when you put the play after the homework. That's one of the things we're going to talk about. That's an awesome strategy. Great. So, as we kind of dig into this, we're going to talk about behavior change fundamentals. And the reason I'm saying behavior change is most of our kiddos know the expectation. If you're having Groundhog Day, they know the expectation. They know the rules. They're just not doing the rules. So we not only, yes, we need to continue to teach behaviors, and we always want to review that. And we don't want to assume that they know the expectation. But most of the time, we're actually talking about a behavior change need, not just a teaching of the behavior. We might have some ingrained behaviors that we need to actually work on changing. So when we think about all of us, we think about what happens when, especially when kids, but this happens to adults too, have feelings and thoughts, and they start to get frustrated, or they don't like the answer they got, or they are overtired, or they're hungry. And we start to get this mismatch of, is this a feeling? Is this a thought? Is this a behavior? Where is this also, where this just feels like this big glob. And really, what we want to start to do when we're thinking about behavior and behavior change is we want to start to separate behaviors as an external component, and the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs as the internal component. And we'll talk about why that's important in just a little bit. And so, as we move through this today, we're really focusing on behaviors tonight. And I just want to kind of say that because um, while they are connected, we're tonight talking about strategies that really help with behavior, increasing positive behaviors, decreasing negative behaviors, and changing ingrained behaviors. So, again, behaviors, our working definition for tonight, is actions or words that can be seen or heard. And so if you are looking in your workbook, there is a little place for you to just jot down some notes if you want to do so. This is our working definition for tonight, but it really is kind of the accepted definition. And again, the difference is that behavior is something we can see or hear. I cannot read anybody's mind. I don't know exactly what they're feeling. And we're actually finding out more and more from some amazing research done by Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett that there's a lot of variability even on the way we all experience emotions and the way we all sort of show our emotion on the outside, as well as how we read emotion. So emotion is a really personal, and thoughts are a really personal component of who we are. And we want to talk about how are they being externalized and what we can do about that. And so what happens with behaviors is we can feel like we're on a roundabout. And sometimes we get off the roundabout, but then we come right back on. And when we're doing this, I want you to think about if these vehicles kept going in this path, they would actually start wearing the pavement down, right? And so they are doing what we call ingraining the behavior. The more we practice a behavior, our brain loves it. Our brain says, oh, great. This is a behavior I can turn into a habit. I'm going to bypass my thinker because this is a really expensive part of our body and our organ. It takes a lot of energy to run this part of our brain. And I'm going to make this more automatic. And so, one of the things we want to think about is, are we kind of accidentally helping our kids practice behaviors that we actually want to minimize? And what do we do about that if we are? And how do we get them to practice more the behaviors that we want to see more? So, this brings us to kind of through that whole idea of behavior. What can I control and what can I not control? And really, all I can control is my own behavior. I have no control over anyone's behavior other than than myself, and that includes my child. So, what can I, as a parent, caregiver, practitioner, teacher, support person in someone's life, how can I influence someone's behavior and, in particular, my child's behavior? Because as a primary caregiver, parent, or guardian, you have a tremendous amount of impact in how to influence and ability to influence your child's behaviors. So we want to capitalize on that. So that is really where we want to focus on tonight, are those two inner circles. And so when we think about parent training is not to fix parents who are broken. And it is not to fix kids who are broken, because nobody's broken. You're just human. You're just human. There's no broken. It's simply to start to learn what works for each kiddo. And these are some things that work for almost every kiddo. And we know that by the research. We know from years and years of research that these strategies work. So Jennifer, are you still with us? If you're still here, Jennifer, you mentioned homework. Do you have one challenge area that kind of comes up the most at your house? And if you're watching this later, I do want you to just kind of think about that, because as you are learning these strategies, I want you to start to actually apply them to those scenarios. That's going to help you use them and remember them. So if homework is a big deal at your house, I want you, as I'm talking about these, oh, great. Yay. Lots of guests. Okay. Well, guests, I'm waiting for you. Tell me in the chat, open up your chat if you haven't yet. It's on the bottom. And tell me, what are some of those big challenge areas at your house with your kiddos, or in a classroom if you're here, or if you're supporting somebody and you hear them, a frustrated parent that sometimes says, is kind of venting to you. What are some of those? Transitions. Thank you, Nicole. Anybody else? We want to hear from you. Anybody else? Maybe nobody has any issues, or they're just trying to listen at the bath time. Defiance. Okay. Yep. So saying no, refusal, and that can also look quiet, right? Defiance and oppositional behaviors can be loud and they can also be like complete shutdown or procrastination or acting like they don't hear you. Just sort of this amazing ability to ignore chores. Okay. Yep. Yep. Chores. Thank you. Yep. Sitting down and doing homework. Okay. Yep, and transitions. Okay, so as we're talking through this, let's really kind of hold those specifically and what this would look like. And I'll try to give you some specific examples. When we think of behavior, I want you to think of it as learning a new language. We parent and we discipline very similarly to either how we were raised or the culture that we were raised in and sort of the beliefs and values around parenting. Or it's either like that or it's 180 degrees opposite. We either like followed in the footsteps or we said, oh my gosh, no, I'm not going to be like my parents. I'm going to do it this way. But it's still relative to how we were raised. So when you're learning some of these techniques, it's really about learning a new language, and behavior speaks the language of action. And remember, we talked about practicing. Just like any language, we have to practice. There are really kind of two different systems in the brain, and this is super simplified. And no neuroscientist is going to love how I exactly explain this, but there's basically the knowing system of the brain, which is unique to humans in the way that we can really problem solve and all of our executive functioning skills. And then we have more of the doing part of the brain. And we want to just kind of think about where behavior tends to live. And when we think about how our nervous system is inputting most of the information that's coming into our brain is coming in through our senses, they actually think about 80%. It's coming in through the doing part of our brain and the amygdala, and it gets run through the fight or flight system, and then it makes it here. So, a lot of times when we think about kids that are impulsive, kids are all impulsive and some are more impulsive than others. That's partly because their doing brain is acting faster than their thinking brain. And all kids have underdeveloped brains and nervous systems. So that's a really, like, that's most of the time, often what's happening when we're seeing behaviors that they might know better, but they don't do better. So I know I'm supposed to go to my local athletic club a few times a week. I don't do better. We all know things that we don't do. And what it takes me in order to do something to get motivated is I have to kind of have a reason. There has to be some kind of an incentive for my brain to do that. So, some signs of this are you should know better by now. I know I've said that. Anybody said that before? Am I the only one? Okay. How many times do we have to tell you, right? The broken record. Like we've had the same discussion. Why is your math homework still at school? Why have you not talked to your coach about the fact that you're going to be gone next weekend? We've talked about this for a month, right? Or use your listening ears. We've already talked about this. When we get our pajamas on, we do this, 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 and this. It's not that hard. We do the same thing every night, right? So when you start to recognize that you are a broken record, that's a great sign for you. Pay attention. I'm a broken record. This is a behavior I want to try to change. This behavior that I continue to say over and over again, what I'm doing isn't working because I keep seeing the behavior. And what I'm actually doing is they're practicing, right? They're practicing this negative behavior. And so, how do we interrupt that? And so, what we can influence is kind of this doing problem cycle. Like we have to think about we give directions, and this is for transitions, this is for homework, this is for to get in the bath, this is to get your shoes on, get your lunch and your backpack ready, the bus is coming. The child doesn't follow the direction for whatever reason. They're oppositional, they're defiant, they're distracted, they're just pokey. Parent often reacts, right? And then we get this anger, resentment, and arguing. And both of our amygdalas, the kid and the adult, kind of go left, and then we have a power struggle. So this is what we're wanting to try to interrupt. And we can influence this. So, do any of you have any of these things? Can any of you be willing to kind of just admit or share? Like, do you get to the point where you have to threaten to get your kid to do something? Do you have, do you feel like there's a lot of procrastination? Are you giving constant reminders and repeating directions? I don't know if anybody has any broken record things that they're just noticing. I know this happens. Procrastination, okay. This is also for adults too, actually. We all do the same thing. It's not unique to kids. Yeah? Anybody else? Anybody have to like kind of get to the point where you're like, I have to say it 15 times and then I finally have to say, if you don't do it, then this is going to happen. That's a really common thing and then kids kind of finally, yes, yes. So if any of these ring true to you, um, yeah, distraction is a huge deal, and we have, like, little computers, right? Right? They're very distracting, they're pinging and dinging, and friends are talking, and news is updating, and YouTube things are dropping, and TikToks are right? So, the big mindset shift here for this part of the training and the workshop is we really wanna kind of create this mindset shift from the knowing problem to the doing problem. And what it takes is the solution is less of a knowing solution and it's more of a doing solution. And we're going to talk about what that means. So here's that proven secret that I don't want to be a secret because it's been in the research for over 50 years. We have two basic bits of behavior. Remember, behavior, actions, words we can see and hear that we're observing from our kids. We're observing negative behaviors. Say it however you want, unwanted, undesirable. They're not great behaviors. They cause a problem for them, us, all the family, whatever it is. And then we have the more positive behaviors. And we want to kind of think in terms of these two buckets. And we also want to kind of think about ratios. So there's only so many hours in the day. If the majority of the behaviors that you're seeing, or even not even if in a whole day, maybe you have just a witching hour at your house, like a hard, we had a lot of parents call that like the 5 to 7:30, if that's just a really tough time at your house, start to count how many negative to positive behaviors. What's your ratio? Because one thing we can do is actually just change the ratio. If we change the positive behaviors by increasing them, we naturally reduce the number of negative behaviors. So that's one of the easier ways to get behavior change is simply to kind of just increase the positives. And what we're really talking about here for transitions, routines, homework, getting ready for bed, getting ready to go to school is we're trying to get kids to have some self control, which means we have to separate behaviors from our feelings, thoughts, and beliefs. This is not to invalidate them. In fact, it's more to validate them. You can feel frustrated, angry, tired, bored, and still choose more of a positive behavior that's going to work better for you, me, the family, the classroom. It is possible to do both. It is possible to have these big feelings, and it is possible to also behave in a way that is more positive. So, kind of coming back to what we can influence, what we influence is our attention. Attention is the secret. They've done study after study recognizing that when parents, and they've done this actually since the 50s, Going into homes, studying different situations with families, when parents notice positive behaviors as much as possible, and they work on not noticing negative behaviors as much as possible, the influence is amazing. It is actually the number one most impactful strategy. And it's not really complicated, but it's not easy. It's not easy. And that's because our brain is wired to notice the negative behaviors. Our brains are supposed to do that. They're supposed to be looking for threats. So we automatically are trained to do that. And then we may have been practicing that for several years as well. And so it's a matter of really shifting our attention and thinking about when we do this, we will increase the likelihood that the behavior will reoccur. We know this for sure. We will lessen the behavior that we start to remove attention from. We reduce practicing of that negative behavior. And we also know that we can't just do this a little bit. It really needs to be pretty consistent. And it is something that you can do across the board, but I absolutely recommend that you pick your broken record behavior to start. Whatever your broken record behavior is, whatever you heard yourself saying, and I know you all were thinking it, even if you didn't put it in the chat, that's the behavior I want you to start with. That's the behavior I want you to start to try to ignore more, let go of more. And the opposite of that behavior is the behavior I want you to start to give attention to. So let's talk about what that means. How do we remove attention while increasing attention? And some of you might start to be thinking, I'm letting them get away with all of these behaviors. So hold on to that. We're not there yet. That's the last part. So we know this is true. We know that when we remove attention, we're actually changing the reoccurrence rate of those negative behaviors. We're changing the ratio. Now we have fewer behaviors to hold them accountable to. So behavior change is also systematic. The more that we can systematically or step by step doing this and consistently, the more success you're going to have. And so this doesn't mean you have to let go of every single behavior. Pick one to start and just start to notice what happens over 3 to 4 weeks when you start to do this. The opposite is also true. If you have behaviors that aren't going away or are getting stronger, unfortunately, it is highly likely, based on tons of years of research, tons and tons of studies, that you may be accidentally giving attention to the negative behaviors, which is a form of reinforcement and growing. So here's what attention, when people say, what do you mean by attention? Here's what I mean. Attention to negative behaviors is scolding, lecturing, punishing can be a form of attention, bribing. What's the difference between rewarding and bribing? Bribing only occurs after you've observed the negative behavior. So, kid starts whining, we're at in church or at the grocery store or wherever it is that you're like they're not supposed to be whining. You say, "If you stop whining, I'm going to give you ice cream when we get home." That's bribing. And why is bribing not helpful? Because how did I get the ice cream? I whined. So the difference between that and rewarding is before we get to Walmart or to church or to the baby shower or whatever it is, where you're like, be on your best behavior. We say, hey, look, here are my expectations. Here are the 3 things you need to do. I'm really clear about that. And then I say, and if you do that, we can stop for ice cream on the way home. And then we have to stay true to that. They either earn the ice cream or they don't. And remember when I said that knowing and doing problem? that will help this part of the brain tell this part of the brain, hold it together. We really want that ice cream. So we do have to use this part of the brain, and we have to help kids know how to engage that. So thanking kids, noticing them, and effectively praising them. And when I say effective praise, I mean specific, enthusiastic, and close to them. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So here's what I want you to think about. When next time you see that broken record behavior, I want you to think, slam on the brakes, stop talking, subtly look away. Remember that actions speak, they're watching your actions. And if it's safe, even move away. And when you do that consistently, the research tells us you have an almost 100% chance of seeing that negative behavior reduce in the next. It doesn't happen overnight. This is the hard thing in the next few weeks. So I want you to kind of think about a goal right now. I want you to, and you can even write this in your on a notebook or in your workbook. What is the one behavior you're going to work on kind of ignoring, slamming the brakes on this? And just do a little experiment and have it be something that isn't going to make or break your life. That's never going to be a good place to start. You can't be late to work because Jilly told you to slam on the brakes for this behavior. I am not going to be able to bail you out of that one. So pick something a little bit more benign, making weird noises, the little whiny voice that drives you crazy, but you're going to work really hard to slam on the brakes and breathe through and maybe even walk out of the room or wear earbuds. I bought some of those loop ear. I'm not kidding, because I need help too. This does not just come naturally to anybody. Picking up clothes off the floor. What happens? What happens? Just see what happens. Now, this doesn't happen alone. This isn't enough because there are two levers to behavior change. But what this will do is it will reduce the negative behavior. Now, remember, we have to increase the ratio. Otherwise, we don't really have behavior change. How do we give attention? We want to be specific. We want to be close. We want to see the whites of their eyes. I like to say, use enthusiastic body language and whatever's appropriate for your kid. You also want to be natural and authentic. You want to be as immediate as possible. And in fact, the research tells us that within a 15-minute window or less, the younger the kid, the shorter that amount of time is, the more potentially neurodivergent or impulsive the child, the shorter that time is. It isn't that it's not a nice gesture to say, hey, by the way, yesterday I really liked how you picked up your clothes. Great for your relationship. Lots of benefits, not a behavior change strategy. We don't get behavior change with that kind of a delay. We also don't get it if it's not consistent. And I want you to do it even if it's expected. So I was one of those parents that was like, why would I tell my kid, great job brushing your teeth when I expect that they just brush their teeth? They're old enough to know. Uh-oh, red flag, right? One of those statements is my red flag. Knowing problem, doing problem. If I want to interrupt the cycle, here's the proven secret. Okay, now what are you going to give attention to this week? We know what you're going to ignore. Now set your goal. The best way to do this is to pick the partnership, pick the negative behavior, and pick the positive opposite behavior that would make this behavior it's incompatible. So the easiest, I know this doesn't always translate to transitions, back talk, because it's a very tangible example. The easiest example is if the child is running, I want to sort of work on not acknowledging the running, and I want as much as possible. And I would then want to, every time they're walking, I want to say, great job walking, because when they're walking, they can't be running. If they're jumping on the bed, I want to acknowledge every time they're sitting or they're not, or they're jumping on the floor or they're jumping in the appropriate place. So that is a fast way to work both levers because you're actually dealing with the same behavior. But it still works even if you're not specifically doing that. So just kind of pick one thing that over the next week you are going to focus on. And here is your challenge. So I have a couple of games. I don't know if I have any of my clients in the audience or watching this later, but they know the clip game because I teach this in my program. There's lots of different versions of this. I call it the clip game. I had a parent I met with this morning who uses pennies and she uses them in her pocket and she just moves a penny from one pocket to the next. Clips are a little obvious to wear around, but they're also like easy to demonstrate with. I have several parents, and I used to do this with teachers too, because teachers can use the same strategy if you have kiddos that have broken record behaviors. I would actually, when I was a coach, a teacher coach, I would hand them 5 hairbands from like the dollar store, nothing fancy. And every time they focused on a positive behavior, they would move the band over. And every time they focused on a negative behavior that they were supposed to be trying to ignore, they had to move it back. And the goal is to get as many over here by the end of the day. But you can even do this just for an hour. You don't have to, like, if you have that tough time, morning is awful, and you're just going to really work on this and see how this works. Just do it for an hour and see if you can kind of hold yourself accountable to that. So that's a good game. We're almost done with this section and I'm going to pause. So if any of you have any questions that are burning about this, you can feel free to put them in the chat. Sarah's going to kind of take note of them. If those of you are still, if you're still with me, um, and I'll take a pause just for a minute. We may save some of them for the Q&A after, but I do want to just take a break. Not a break, but just give everybody a moment to process this section. So we also want to think about this as two sides of the same coin. And I've kind of mentioned this, but I want to come back to this because this is really important. First of all, we're ignoring the behavior, not the child. So important that our kids do not feel rejected, abandoned, shamed. I'm very neutrally removing my attention while I'm observing the behavior. So I have lots of puppets I use. So if my kiddo is like trying to negotiate, I just need 10 more minutes on this switch. I have to just finish this level. And they start to get kind of belligerent and yell at me, "You're the worst parent ever." I am not ignoring the kid, I'm ignoring the behavior. The minute that behavior kind of lulls, I'm right back in the conversation. It doesn't have to be perfect. They don't have to be like, "Yeah, so I had to get off the switch when I did." I hope I'm not, it says weak network. Am I weird? No. Okay, good. I have like super fast Wi-Fi and I'm like hardwired in, so there shouldn't be a weak network. Anyway, you never know. Snow is coming. So it's very subtle. And when I give my attention back, I'm just moving on with my day. In fact, I want you to think about it's almost like you have amnesia. You're not coming back to this conversation. You're not feeding energy to the behavior that you're trying to ignore. I like to have parents practice with a partner. It can be a co parenting partner, a teaching partner, a neighbor, a friend, a grandparent, a caregiver. We have to plan ahead. We know for certain from the research that when parents don't plan to do this, it doesn't happen. Our bodies go back to default. Our behavior goes back to what we've been doing. I have parents that put Post-it notes around. I have parents that use a little like the sign language for I. The sign is this that might say like they do this to the like parent when they're like not ignoring the behavior to help each other out. Um, Catch yourself incorrect. In the minute that you're giving it attention, oh my gosh, broken record just came out. take yourself off of that. And I'm glad some things are coming in. We're going to check on those in just a second. Again, we know that one doesn't work without the other. So if we just ignore and we don't give attention, not going to see behavior change. And the same is true if we just give attention, but we're still giving attention to the negatives. We've increased our positive attention, but we're still giving tons of attention to the negatives. We're not going to see the same kind of behavior change. And we have to be good at letting go and moving on. And I'm a little bit of a grudge keeper. I have to admit it. So, like, I'm sometimes bringing things up from 2 days ago. Remember when you didn't get off that switch? That's why we're not having ice cream tonight. So, we got to let it go. Didn't get off the switch. That inning's over. So, that is how we use this proven secret. And we know that if you are consistent with this for the next 4 to 6 weeks, which sounds like a long time, but by the time spring break comes, you're going to have a change in those behaviors if you're consistent. So, our mindset shift for this section is really kind of our random kind of disciplining, managing behaviors, parenting, you might call it, to strategic. I know which behaviors I'm giving attention to, and I know which behaviors I'm. So, what's come in so far? Anything, Sarah, that is worth now, or do you think maybe saving it?
Um, this just touched my heart. Somebody had shared that they were dealing with a moody teenager a few years ago and couldn't understand. So they followed her and said, I know you better than that. And then the child turned around and hugged her and said, "Am I broken?" And she said she shared it blew her away. She had to leave her um, and just cry for a minute, and then was able to ask her what she was talking about. And she found out it was something that she had dealt with the other parent, and needless to say, she said, or they said, I was shocked and had to give her, that just the reaffirmation, "You're beautiful, you're smart," etc.
Love
And
that.
and that is like a perfect example of what you were talking about of being present and you know um, reading the room real well.
Yeah, it is so help that is like really this is a great example. Thank you for whoever shared this because um this you know how and I grew up in the Midwest, so I'm going to make fun of Midwesterners for any of you that are Midwestern. I think you'll agree with us that we can be a little passive aggressive. We're like extra nice. Um and there's this strange thing that can kind of happen whether you're from the Midwest or not, but it's sort of like these backhanded things that like I'm sort of acting nice, but I'm not, or I say something that it sounds like it's sort of couched in I'm teaching you, like maybe yesterday you didn't pick up your clothes, but today you do. And the child picks up their clothes. And then I give them attention. That was just great, honey. I really appreciate when you put them in the hamper. That makes laundry day so much faster for me. I don't mind doing laundry. I just don't want to have to pick up the clothes off of the floor for everybody. And I'm telling you, this is what I've been telling you all along. If you could have just done this for the last several 17 years, right? And so we slide this thing in. And so it's really easy for us to bring shame and to bring, and we have to be gentle with ourselves too. But to try to catch that and to really be thinking about separating the behavior from from the person and validating their feelings. You can feel really angry and you can still be calm, safe, and kind. I can be really angry and I can still model being calm, safe, and kind. So I love that because nobody's broken, but we can all learn. We can all learn. Awesome. Well, if any other questions come up about that, I'm going to keep going just in terms of our time. I want to go through some scripts here. And this is really just kind of taking what we just talked about and putting this into language. So we've already talked a little bit about what does effective praise look like. I think of the word science, remembering what it looks like. What I want you to think of in terms of making your praise more effective is from vague to specific. So wonderful, thank you, nice, not behavior changers. Be specific. I noticed you got in the car right away and you were really calm about it. I appreciate when you follow my directions the first time, right? And go right upstairs when the timer goes off. It was really helpful that you scraped your dishes. Just remember next time to carefully load them in the dishwasher. It's okay to still give a little feedback, but remember to still praise the part that they did do. Other script tip other script tips, that's kinda hard to say. Supercharge your attention with touch or gesture. Gesture and touch are the greatest form of human connection, and so if we're going to use that as a parent caregiver with a tap on the shoulder, a tussle, and this is all dependent on what your kid tolerates. There are kids that this does not work for. But if they do tell, and gestures can work just as much. The brain sort of reads those and goes, ooh, because that's like my full attention, right? I'm not just giving you my words, I'm also giving you my body. I am fully in giving you my attention, right? Uh, Describing those behaviors and remembering you can still do part of the task can be praised, even if it wasn't all done. And you can still give that correction. So again, we're going from vague to specific. And in this last section, we want to talk about this success formula for accountability, because usually at this point, parents are starting to say, yeah, but I can't let them get away with this. Yeah, but how am I going to let them go out how am I going to let them go out the door with flip-flops on tomorrow when it's snowing? I can't ignore some things. So we are going to come back a minute to four laws of behavior change. This actually comes from Clear's book, Atomic Habits, but this is kind of a known behavior change theory in that we need to make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. We're not going to change all behaviors at once. Remember, you're picking one, and the one that you are picking, you want to think about how do we motivate that brain to do a different behavior. And what we know is that punishment is actually one of the worst ways to motivate the brain. And when it does motivate the brain, it comes with some pretty serious side effects. And it usually is at the cost of your relationship with your child and their self esteem. So we have to be really careful. I'm not saying there are times when punishment in the research, very mild punishment can be effective. Most of the time, it is the lesser of the two. Positive reinforcement is far more powerful. So if you can use that more than anything, it really does motivate the brain. And what we know is it's actually not the reward that's the motivator. And neuroscience continues to come out with this study after study, even now as they're doing more studies on this. It is the anticipation of the reward. So when we have, this is back to bribing, when we have a negative behavior and we suddenly give a reward, we just made that behavior something that's now going to be probably repeated. So we want to be really careful that we're not using rewards after negative behaviors. We want to use them after positive behaviors. And we also want to think about how we're prompting the kid to have the behavior in the first place. Okay. So what we've been talking about right now is all after a behavior is observed. How can we actually set our kids up for more success? And the fastest way to do this is to ask or to use a statement instead of asking a question. So, another thing that I want you to pay attention to is how often are you asking your kids to do something? Because when we ask them to do something, we get an answer. And A lot of times it's no. I actually had my kiddo say, I respectfully decline. And Sarah knows this kiddo. Yesterday, I respectfully declined.
Okay.
I asked a question that wasn't negotiable. So we want to set ourselves and them up for success by giving directions that are more effective. And I like to think of those cones. Like when you see cones on the road, and a car has to like drive around them, right? Or we know that we have to kind of go around the cones. Those shape a direction, they change a direction. And so when we're giving an effective direction, we want to be close, just like praise, whites of their eyes. We want to try to stick to twice or less because when we start to nag, which is 3 times or more, that what the research says, we actually got less cooperation, hands down. Why? Because once they're not following the direction and we continue to give it attention, what happens? So that's tricky. That's its own session. That's its own session. We want to be neutral. Some of us can be a little barky. So we want to be careful with that. Have somebody help you work on your not, if you're a barker. I have the teacher voice and I have the teacher eye, and my kids always remind me of that. You're looking at me like a teacher. I am. I was. I still sometimes do. Oops. Um, State the expectation in the direction. I need you to take the guard. Oh, somebody said, Jennifer, when homework is done, then you can have time to play and be specific. And remember, if we put the reward in the prompt, in the direction, we're working their motivation system. When you're done with your chores, if you're done by 6 p.m., you can have 30 minutes on the Nintendo. When we finish family chore or laundry time or homework time, then we can have popcorn and a short show. So this is where we're talking about when then directions. So we want to make a statement inevitable. And the best way to do that is to say, please start your direction with please, because it's really hard to make that into a question. Please, can you? I mean, I guess you sort of can, but um, presume compliance, that they're going to comply. I used to like look at them like, I'm pretty sure you're not going to do this. And then they didn't. Add that motivator within the prompt. When you do this, then this will happen. Avoid if then. If means maybe you're going to do it, maybe you're not. When means you're going to do it. And then this is going to happen. This is how you increase accountability. When your teeth are brushed tonight for 2 minutes, tomorrow sweets will be available. Then tomorrow sweets can happen. So this is where you start to add in that accountability. This requires patience and practice. This is not the easiest to do. Simple, not easy. So we think here's some when thens. You complete your homework before dinner calmly, you will earn 30 minutes of free time after dinner. You could also say you complete your homework before dinner calmly, and then you'll be able to go outside and play. So start to brainstorm some when then. This is my expectation. These are some things that can happen. What if they don't get their homework done before dinner? Then they don't get to go out and play. That isn't a punishment. That just means they didn't earn the reward. They might feel like it's punishment. They might interpret it that way, but it's really for the brain's sake. The neuroscience part of it is they just didn't earn the reward. And that is something that they will give them another opportunity the next day because I bet they'll get their homework done if they're really motivated by that reward. So we're moving from being controlling, which remember we really can't do. There's no such thing as controlling somebody else, to motivating. And we can do this with just some very simple language changes. Simple, not necessarily easy, but practicing writing them out, creating scripts for yourself, and sticking to one or two behaviors to start, one or two directions. What are your broken records? What are the directions you're saying every single day, sometimes 49,000 times a day? So as we wrap up, I know I saw something come in the chat. We're going to be moving into our Q&A. So for any of you that do want to hang out just for a little bit and you have some specific questions, I can take some questions. I just want to do a little bit of just a review and recap as we're kind of ending our 1 hour here. We're rounding the hour out. So remember, we have two levers we're working when we're talking about lasting behavior change. We're not in this for the short term. There are very few quick wins in behavior change. And if it's a quick win, it is likely not a sustained win. So it can be a quick win, but we have to have a long game. We always have to have the long game because behavior change isn't about tomorrow, it's about 4 to 6 weeks from now, and we always want to target behaviors. We can't change everything at once. Nobody can handle that. What happens when we try to do that is we just become randomized messes and overwhelmed, and then we just quit and we don't do any of it. We say it's just too much to remember. We want to remember it's systematic, step by step, take it slowly, take it one thing at a time. Think about what you give attention to will grow. So remember, it's gradual, but it will grow. You can't always see it in weeks 1 and 2 and 3, just like you can't see the seed until it starts to come out of the ground. And I also like to help people remember that lasting behavior change is complex. I've simplified it, but it is not simple. There are lots of ingredients to behavior change. And just like baking a cake, an egg is not a cake. Butter is not a cake. There are some very important ingredients to a cake. And then there's some things that we might personalize for people that like chocolate versus yellow versus vanilla. But we basically have the same ingredients. And then we have to stir them into this big, messy slop. It's still not a cake. And then what does it need? Heat and time. So give yourself grace to keep practicing, even when you're not seeing the change right away. Starting small is most important. Remember that 15-minute rule, trying to catch it right in that 15 minutes. And absolutely use tools to help you. I think I can say it without it going off because I changed your name. Alexa is one of my best parenting partners. I use Alexa a lot. And Alexa gives a lot of directions and reminders. And then my kiddo's mad at Alexa more than me. I mean, still kind of me, but um, use timers on your phone, use notes on your phone, practice in the mirror, write it on your mirror before as you're getting ready to go. Yes, Siri on your iPhone, right? Use the tools that you have to help you stay on track. Give yourself some little motivators. Motivate yourself, reward yourself. If you get all your clips over, say, oh, maybe I'm going to have a scoop of ice cream tonight. So use your motivation system too. So this is a QR code. There's also a form that Sarah can drop in. I would love to hear from you. And what I didn't tell anybody, but what I am willing to do is if you put your information, your contact information in the form for just as a thank you for coming tonight. And sorry, this is just for our people that came tonight and gave up this hour. I love it if you're watching this later. But I just want to thank the people that did come tonight and interact with us. I am giving you, if you would like it, a 45-minute free session with me to kind of go over anything that you have questions about. So, but you have to put your information in so I know that you want that. And then I will get in contact with you. You can hunt me down too. Like, you know how to find me too. But that's the easiest way for me to contact you. So I just want to really thank you all for being here. And if you're watching it later, I still want to thank you. You still can have a free 15-minute consult with me anytime. That's available on my website. So we can talk through any of this, but I really appreciate those of you that gave this time up. And don't forget, March 2nd, thanks to Keith, I'm going to be kind of taking some of these concepts and putting them into digital text. So that is how we stop pulling our hair out and being the broken record and get off the roundabout. Any questions from anybody? I will hang around here for a little bit if somebody wants to give some specific questions on specific scenarios or anything that I mentioned tonight that just isn't quite settling right.
I have one.
Yeah.
When you talked about like do this, you know, like when and then,
When
um,
then, yep.
how useful is it to involve the children in that process? Like I know when they're older, but about what age should you
I
involve the
see.
kids
Like
in that process?
what would you like to have happen?
Mhm.
Um, I think almost any, to be honest. And I'm gonna say that with a caveat because we also can have this tendency to feel like our kids have to have voice and choice in absolutely everything. And they actually don't have the capacity to do that. So we also want to kind of think about giving parameters. So if we're going to give voice and choice in what would you like to earn, or we're going to create a routine together, these are the things that are the non negotiables. These have to happen by this time. What would you like? If you don't wanna open it up to, a new pack of Pokemon cards every single day that they get their pajamas on the first time calmly, that can't be an option. So, I think voice and choice is important for even our two-year-olds, when we say, "Would you like to have the strawberries or the blueberries after supper?" And they say, "Cake." We say, "So your options are strawberries or blueberries. Which would you like to choose?" Or none, or none. None's a choice. So I think does that help you with that question? It's important that we give voice and choice when and we can't do it all the time. We just can't. But I think for especially those repeated routines or behaviors or things or the tricky parts, it's really tricky to get my kiddo to go to swim lessons on Saturday mornings. So I need to talk to them about what would be great, but I'm not willing to go to Culver's every Saturday after you just worked out. Like, and some parents may be. That's no judgment if you are. Like, but if you're somebody that's like, I'm not going to spend, I don't know how much it is now for a Culver's something. Um, we just don't have that, or that's just not in whatever. Or I don't want you eating that every Saturday, whatever it is, then you don't want to give that as an option. So have that sort of shored up before it doesn't need to be open ended. Yeah. Question about how we can see this again. Okay. So for everybody that's here, and then Sarah's going to get a link that you can put out again, and then I will share this again on March 2nd. My system has kind of a hub for you to be able to go in, rewatch this so that you can see the slides. It also will have access to the workbook and direct message me. So it's not unlimited direct messaging. I do have clients and I do have to make sure I'm taking care of people that are in a contract with me and working with me, but I also will do some minimal direct messaging for anybody that's watching this. If you have a quick question like I didn't understand what you meant by this or whatever. And if it becomes more than that, I'll suggest that we could book a time together. Or, like I said, there's always a free consult on my website, a free 20-minute consult. So you can always take advantage of that one time as well. But yes, that will be coming out. And so it will be in. And if for some reason you're not able to access it, just get a hold of Sarah and she'll find me or me. And I can put my email in here as well. I probably should have put that on the slides. There's always something you forget. Any other questions? And there's Sarah's. I thought I saw. Okay, I saw. Just used. Oh, okay. Yeah. So good. All right. So you just said, "That's my business phone. I just told you to close and get off. It's time for bed." And he said, "Okay." And he handed it back to you. I think that's what this person is saying. So giving that sort of directive, that statement, and again, it doesn't have to be, it can, I really want you to practice trying to say it neutrally and saying it specifically and then almost acting as if it's going to happen. Now, this is a good little plug for the March 2nd because one of the rules I do have with my actual client, if any of you are watching this or on here, you're going to know what I'm going to say next. One of my rules with tech is that you do not give kids access to tech unless you can control it remotely. And if it's a device that you can't, then you don't give them access. Now, there's always an exception to the rule. I will tell you, I'm sure I've broken that rule when we have been waiting in line and, for an hour and a half to get whatever ticket. There's times when or you're at the clinic and the doctor is running an hour and a half behind. But for the most part, one of the things that we're going to talk about on March 2nd is how do you utilize the power of access to what to ensure that you don't have power struggles over. And it's great that this 8-year-old was able to do that. Um, but it can really eliminate a lot of power struggles if you can control the devices that they do have access to. And this is even for our 17-year-olds. Any other questions? Is anybody still on with us? Let's see if there's anybody here. We have a few left. So if any of you are still on, the 3 of you that are still hanging out, if you have any last questions that you wanna put in, I'll just wait for a moment in case somebody's thinking. Or Sarah, if you have any other questions that might have come up that I didn't notice.
No, I think you answered them all.
Awesome, awesome. It's not a bad idea. I wouldn't be totally opposed to hosting more of an intimate um, conversation dialogue. Like this is a webinar. This is kind of watch as you're right. This would be you'd probably need a sitter. This would be like everybody would be on camera. And maybe we do it after the second, Sarah, and it just kind of as a wrap up. And I would just do that because I'm very passionate about this. It would be how about my contribution back to Keith? Um, my donation back to Keith could be to just do in addition to any of you that want the 45-minute session. But I think that that's a great idea as we kind of go through some of these concepts and have the opportunity to dialogue about them and hear from other parents. That's one of the things that in my program I so believe in is having a community. And so the parents that they can ask questions of each other. Does this happen to you? What do you do about this? It's just really helpful to have. It takes the whole village. So,
It sure does. I like
oh,
it.
I love that, Jennifer. Yes, thanks for coming. And great, Nicole. Yep. And yes, you will get you should be able, the recording will get, um, pushed out. And like I said, if for some reason you don't have access, um, just you will have access. So that was why I set it up the way I set it up. So just want to make sure you have that. And you have a little bit of access to me as well. And I hope I see you on the second. All right. Do we have anybody else? We still have just a couple. And sometimes, oh, they're popping off. All right. Thanks, everybody. I am going to stop our recording. Okay, I think it's just